Former US President Donald Trump has filed a lawsuit against tech giants Google, Twitter, and Facebook, claiming that he is the victim of censorship. He called the lawsuit a very beautiful development for our freedom of speech. The most important finance news today by MasterDigest. European stock markets nosedive amid fears of rising inflation. Stocks in Europe slumped into the red on Thursday as concerns around rising inflation resurfaced after signals from the US Federal Reserve. In London, the FTSE 100 nosedived 1.9%, hovering just above the 7,000-point mark, while the CAC was 2.2% down in France and the DAX fell 1.6% in Germany. The FTSE 100 fell with miners and banks the principal sectors weighing on the index, suggesting that investors have started to worry again about the strength of the economic recovery, said Russ Mould, investment director at AJ Bell. Miners' fortunes are heavily tied to commodity prices, and the cost of metals and minerals is typically determined by supply and demand for industrial projects around the world. He added, banks are also heavily influenced by economic activity. A strong period of growth means there could be greater opportunities to lend money to businesses, and such a backdrop might also point to rising interest rates, which increases the chances for the banking sector to make higher profit margins. If the economic outlook is not as strong, then investors start to go off banks for fear that it'll be harder for them to push up earnings. A string of corporate news also moved individual stocks in London, with Persimmon down more than 4%. The house builder said in its trading update for the first half of the year that sales completions came in at 7,406, close to the 7,584 seen 2 years ago before the start of the pandemic.
The rate thing is it's a crazy story. I think the textbooks that we used in college and business school about the stronger economy and higher rates and all, they're all going to have to be rewritten. And I think we're just dealing with an economy that I think is not as good as people think.
The plunge for Europe reflects cautious sentiment in Asia-Pacific and the US, despite the S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite closing at record highs Wednesday. US stock futures are pointing to significant losses at the open on Wall Street later in the day. The US Labor Department's latest jobless claims figures were a focal point for investors on Thursday, posting an unexpected rise as a recent run of job growth slowed. First-time jobless claims total 373,000 for the week ending July 3rd, compared with a 350,000 Dow Jones estimate. The previous week's levels was revised up by 7,000 from 364,000 to 371,000. Former US President Donald Trump sues Facebook, Twitter, Google over platform bans. Trump wants the courts to force the social media platforms to reinstate his and some of his supporters' accounts. He filed class action lawsuits against tech giants Facebook, Twitter, and Google because of bans imposed on him and others. We're demanding an end to the shadow banning, a stop to the silencing, a stop to the blacklisting, vanishing, and cancelling, Trump said at a news conference in Bedminster, New Jersey.
Today, in conjunction with the America First Policy Institute, I'm filing as the lead class representative a major class action lawsuit against the big tech giants, including Facebook, Google, and Twitter, as well as their CEOs, Mark Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai, and Jack Dorsey. 3 real nice guys.
He spoke from behind a lectern bedecked with an insignia designed to look like the presidential seal, and in front of a backdrop reminiscent of a White House portico. Trump argued that the suspension of his social media accounts amounts to an infringement on the First Amendment's guarantee that speech won't be curtailed by the government. Fundamental to that case is his relatively novel contention that the major tech firms function as arms of the federal government rather than as private companies.
This one is not that impressive as well. Essentially, I'm going to say no. So the 1996 CDA, that's the Communication Decency Act, Section 230 of that act essentially provides a safe harbor, a legal safe harbor for tech companies. So these social media companies that say, you know what, you can actually censor social media comments if it is obscene, which makes sense, or if it violates the company's standards. Now, we remember that he was censored and suspended, as well as some of the other people in this class action lawsuit, following the January 6th insurrection, out of fear that more violence would ensue. And so based on that very concrete piece of federal legislation, the Communications Decency Act, highly unlikely that he's going to be able to prove that what they did wasn't in good faith.
The Analyzing Commercial Impact of UEFA Euro 2020 Tournament Postponement report has been added to ResearchAndMarket.com's offering. Using the publisher's Sport and Travel and Tourism Intelligence Centres, this report aims to analyse the potential impact of the delayed Euro 2020 tournament under the various scenarios laid out by UEFA, in addition to the potential impact of a one-nation event. Among such topics as previous impact of European Championships and expected impact of Euro 2020 pre-COVID-19, the report suggests also a deep dive into host destination snapshot for each capital participating in Euro 2020. In the end, the report predicts the various scenarios that UEFA may look to employ as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, while assessing the commercial footprint of the tournament and the potential impact on sponsors. UFC gets a piece of sports cryptocurrency money with $175 million fight kit sponsorship. Cryptocurrency platform Crypto.com agreed to terms with Endeavor-owned UFC, adding another sports organization to its sponsorship roster. Terms of the agreement were not disclosed publicly, but according to people familiar with the deal, it's worth $175 million over 10 years. It says, Crypto.com will become UFC's first ever global official fight kit partner, entitling Crypto.com to place their branding on UFC fight kits as worn by UFC athletes in competition, as well as fight kit apparel worn by the athletes' corner men and women. The crypto sponsorship space remains active in 2021. The National Basketball Association landed its first team jersey patch agreement with a crypto firm last week when the Portland Trail Blazers signed a deal with Storm X, and before that, the Miami Heat struck an arena naming rights pact with FTX.US. Other NBA teams, including the San Antonio Spurs, could be targets too. UFC will host its UFC 264 main event on Saturday, featuring popular fighter Conor McGregor against Dustin Poirier for the third time. Bitcoin made another attempt at moving upwards on July 8, but created another long upper wick. It has fallen slightly since, so far reaching a low of $32,530. It has been trading relatively close to this level since June 21st. Technical indicators are undecided. BTC is still trading inside the same range between $31,300 and $40,550. The total cryptocurrency market cap is down nearly 7% today, after making some headwinds earlier this week. Since June 22nd, the market cap has been moving in a tight range between $1.3 trillion and $1.5 trillion. It's currently sitting near the middle of this range at $1.42 trillion. EU documents this week showed that the European Union will propose a new authority to crack down on money laundering and new transparency requirements for transfers of crypto assets, as reported by Reuters. A separate proposal would introduce new EU requirements for service providers in crypto assets to collect and make accessible data concerning the originators and beneficiaries of transfers in those assets. Jeff Bezos' net worth jumps to $211 billion, making him the richest person ever. While he may no longer be Amazon's CEO, Bezos continues to become wealthier. The 57-year-old mogul, who founded the online retailer out of his garage 27 years ago this month, became the richest man in history when his net worth rose $8.4 billion to reach a record-breaking $211 billion on Tuesday, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. That places Bezos ahead of Tesla CEO Elon Musk, whose net worth is $181 billion as of Wednesday morning. Bernard Arnault, the chairman and chief executive of luxury goods company LVMH Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton, is in third with a net worth of $169 billion. Bezos' milestones come the same week as he stepped down as Amazon's CEO to hand over the position to Andy Jassy, the now former CEO of Amazon Web Services.